There's a retirement myth that isn't spoken about too often. And if you are a boomer woman, you will recall as we were coming through the decades, the retirement promise was that we would retire at a fixed point. But what we're recognizing is what we were told and the reality we are currently living in and what we're moving towards is very different. And one of the questions that might be keeping you up, the proverbial keeping you up at night, is if I was asked to retire tomorrow or in 2027, would I be able to do so? And I can categorically tell you, nope, I'm not in the position to do so. And I know I'm not alone. There are millions of other women around the world, boomer women, who are in this really this position whereby it's the acknowledgement that we're in touch and distance of the forever changing retirement age, and yet there isn't enough in terms of a pension fund to fund the rest of our lives. And so what we're staring into is a sense of having to work through our 60s and 70s, maybe even into our 80s. And that's not a far stretch because we have examples, although they're in different income brackets, but we do have examples of us as older people working longer. If we look across the pond, we have Biden, who took office at 78. We had Trump 10 years ago, who took it at 70. He's now 80, and we all know where he is now. And then if you think of Charles and Camilla, Charles is 77, Camilla is 79. So we're seeing lived examples of us as older people working. But where we are as the average woman, there are some factors that are hidden behind the kind of illusion or the myth of retirement, because where we are here in the UK, the retirement age is moving towards 67, and that will be completed by March 2028. There's even talk of it going up to 68 by 2044. It could be brought forward, but it's been contested by governments. But the fact it's already out there is telling you that this continuous moving goalposts. So there is no reassurance in terms of wait until retirement, because the ideal of it, but the resourcing of it, there's a disconnect, because our retirement paths, particularly from a statutory and even with some private pensions, is that they're under-resourced. The Pension Commission speaks about the fact that women, from a private pension point of view, are retiring with maybe £81,000, whereas men are retiring with £156,000, which is nearly double the amount. So these are real figures, but also these figures, and the reason why I'm speaking about this is because I don't want us to get caught up in the reality is that we did it wrong. There was something wrong with us. If we look at actually structurally what was going on and what continues to go on, is that this is proof that it's more than just this myth. We've been actually living into an illusion. And more data bears this out, because we've got Mercer, we have Scottish Widows, and they're saying as women, we are retiring with anywhere from 55% of what men retire on down to 32%. And where you think about, well, where did this all start from? How did this all start? Well, we need to go back into the framework of when we were coming through the decades. And the framework we were living through was this idea of education, work, and then retirement. So this three-pronged way of living was actually designed at a time when we weren't expected to live longer, because we're now projected to be living into our 90s and 100. But the idea underneath it all was that we would have 44 years of continuous employment. There's no break in income. And then we would save 25% of this continuous income to then fund 35 years post-retirement. Well, nobody really hit that figure. It must be, a percent of 1%. So that was never a reality, because the majority of people, 99.9% of people through the ages, have never hit it. And yet, this is what we've been working towards. But what it doesn't take account of, women in particular, is that, for those who've had children, so there's been career breaks because of parenting, or career breaks because you are a stay-at-home mum, which is a phenomenal job in itself and doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. But as a single woman, there's redundancy. There's ill health. You could be a carer for your aging parents, or you could be a carer for grandchildren. There are a spectrum of things that impact retirement and pensions. And let's not forget the whole economy and how that has bobbed and weaved over the decades. And we can just look back within the last 20 years and what has happened to the economy. And in that economic downturn, companies and pension funds haven't been able to replenish the pot, which means there's a gap. That's the reality of what we're living into. So if you're a boomer woman who is feeling the pressure of it, I feel it, and I know millions of you around the world feel it as well. You're not alone, but I want you to start taking this pressure off yourselves. I did it all wrong. You didn't. So there are a couple of academics, Professor Gratton and Professor Scott, and they wrote a book called The 100-Year Life, which is talking about and reframing the realities of what we're currently living in and what we're moving even more so towards. And their idea is to think about, we live a multi-frame and multi-staged life. So instead of education and then work and then retirement, this multifaceted life that we currently live into means we're working for a period of time. It could be a career, it could be a series of jobs. We've lost our job, made redundant, or left our jobs to pursue interest, hobbies, or taken time out to retrain because we're observing and we're living in very changing times. There's shifting sands, changes in the types of roles that are available. Ageism continues to knock at the door. So in terms of traditional roles, the traditional job path, that is not even slowly, that's rapidly being eroded. Then we're factoring in AI and technology that is replacing a number of jobs. There's no denying that. Then we have the younger generations who are equally struggling to find work. So there's a whole multitude of reasons why the reality of what we live in doesn't support this idea of we go to school, we go to uni. If you go to uni, we work and then we retire. And it is in this multi-stage framing that we can be looking at, okay, there's a career break, maybe there's time for going into a bucket list, or there's a new venture that you want to take on. And this is where the reality of this has been going on for at least 10, 15, 20 years. And it certainly is a reality I'm aware of because of the constriction and the lack of opportunities that I have been building and testing and living into the reality of what I'm calling industries of one. And that's, I think, could be a practical solution for us as older women to possibly reframe things instead of focusing on, we have to work, which is a reality. That there's truth in that without a doubt. But instead of having to work, one reality, is this an invitation to be thinking of deploying our decades of experience in a way that's meaningful to us, for us to use in a way whereby we can bolster our lives and we're directing it in a way that's meaningful to us. So therefore, the reality of the illusion we're living in is one thing, but it's about how do we package up, the golden nuggets that exist in our lives. And that's through, the wisdom, the talent, the skills, the insights we have gathered over 6 decades prior to, working through to where we are now, that we are bringing solutions to our own lives, and maybe through this beautiful nuance mosaic of skills, lived experiences, etc., we could then be maybe troubleshooters or solution providers, fractional workers, or fractional we have a toolkit where we can bring this eclectic range of skills into companies because we've got intellectual property in a way that AI can't give anybody, because we've lived through the decades of all the changes, the societal ones, the political ones, the technological ones, the cultural ones. We've actively lived through them. And so that's why I'm inviting you into this idea, this framework, this movement around we are industries of one. And there is some truth to having to work, because the reality of the deficits, if we were asked tomorrow, could you retire in 2027? Many of our hands would shoot right up and say, not me. But if we reframe, and the reframing actually, from my lived experience, it kind of bolsters your own sense of confidence and competence, because we're aware of the realities, but at the same time, we're also being self-determined. So if you are curious as to what could be some of the golden nuggets that live right inside your skill sets, but you're maybe confused about it and you want some clarity over it, or you want a starting point, then I'm going to invite you to download my free audio guide about the 3 golden nuggets that are living or hidden inside your life experiences, your life story. You could start there. Or you've got a sense of, what the nuggets are, but you're not sure in terms of how to structure it. Then you could book in for a VIP session where a wonderful plan could be brought together that helps launch you or act as a bridge that takes you from where you are, gives you a clear sense of clarity and direction, and then it can be built on from there. So come join me. We are these wonderful satellites of industries of one. And so the necessity of having to work, if we reframe it and think about how can we deploy the eclecticism of what we've lived through and what AI and younger generations do not have, I think can strengthen us from the inside out, which moves us beyond, for those of you who are feeling quite fearful, and as a result, you're feeling stuck, you're not quite sure what direction to move in. That's one reality. But the longer you are inactive of a decision that could take you forward means that the chasm between being told to wait for retirement, the retirement age, and the diminishing public purse that funds it, state pension, but if you never had a corporate pension, like millions of us have not got a corporate pension, then maybe don't delay thinking about how could you repurpose, repackage. If you want any help with that, click the link below. But also I'd like to hear your views on how do you see yourself as we're living through this time of moving away from education, work, retirement into this multi-phase, multi-stage life that helps us broaden our identity and possibly introduces new options. I'd love to know. Let's get into conversation. Let's get into dialogue. Put your comments in the comment box below and I will see you again very soon. Take care. Bye.